Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call the police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from.
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
We struggle with ASU strike.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.
The subject of violence against women and girls has been one of the most worrisome conversations, particularly in contemporary history. Violence against women and girls is believed to be one of the most prevalent and pervasive human rights violations in the world. Across the globe, the United Nations says an estimated 736 million women, almost 1 in 3, have been subjected to physical and or sexual intimate partner violence, non-partner sexual violence, or both, at least once in their life. Largely, this scourge has intensified in different settings, including in the workplace and online spaces, and has been exacerbated by post-pandemic effects, conflict, and climate change. What are some of the critical gaps? The world needs more investments in women's organizations, better legislation, prosecution of perpetrators, more services for survivors, and training for law enforcement officials. While all of these sound like a tall order, my guest will help us beat context and perspectives into the conversation and share invaluable insights on the place of women issues of nation building, as well as social, political, and economic development. The global theme of this year's 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence is Unite, Invest to Prevent Violence Against Women and Girls, which emphasizes the need for funding prevention strategies to proactively stop gender-based violence. Hello and welcome. I'm Uyag Mofwegbe saying this is Global Morning in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, and this is Global Television. Poultry Association of Nigeria, PAN, has recently raised the alarm that 12 trillion Naira poultry industry is at the brink of collapse. The reason experts say is not unconnected with the negative impact of the Naira redesign policy and high cost of raw materials, especially maize and soybean in the country that has stifled poultry production, leading to the closure of over 30% of farm enterprises and downsizing of about 50% capacities of other farms across the country. In this special report, our correspondent, Chidima Jewison, walks us through challenges and prospects associated with the poultry segments of Nigeria's agricultural sector.
With an ever-growing urban and rural economy, there had been great clamor for diversification of Nigeria's economy and a deliberate national drive to promote agriculture as a business, which makes agriculture account for about 23% of the country's GDP. Incidentally, the poultry subsector contributes over 20% of the total livestock and fisheries shares of agriculture's GDP, which makes agriculture a huge contributor to the nation's gross domestic earnings. However, the poultry subsector is still subjected to a lot of challenges.
This special report focuses on the intricacies of poultry farming in Nigeria, how agricultural policies affect the business of poultry farming, and the impact the ban, which was recently lifted, will have on the poultry farming business in Nigeria. Even with the increased focus on poultry farming, the poultry subsector has experienced a lot of challenges over the years, which has impacted the business.
I think when we're talking about the challenges of poultry in Nigeria, the challenges are so enormous. But to highlight few of it, like in recent time, we had a COVID-19 pandemic, which really hit the industry so greatly that some of the farms were closed. We also have this cash crunch of cashless policy of CBN, which also posed a lot of threats to the industry, that many farms were closed down, especially in FCT here.
Even more so with the recent lifting of ban on poultry items. What sort of impact would this have on the industry, positive or negative?
The idea of lifting the ban on this poultry product, I wouldn't say it's a bad one, but it has its attending negative impact on the production in the country. If the ban is being lifted, it will affect the local production actually. Most of those imported products, we can't ascertain the level of health safety yes in it, because most of them, you don't know how they have been preserved over time before they have been imported into the country. The state of emergency declared on food security is a very laudable program of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
As a fast-developing subsector that contributes over 20% of agricultural GDP, what developmental policies and action plans are being put in place to build the poultry industry?
There are a lot of policies and programs, but as we always experience, the implementation is always the problem. Because even in FCT here, I have worked directly with the Animal Husbandry Development. We came up with a good policy.
And what are the key issues that need to be addressed to secure continued growth for Nigeria's poultry industry?
The key things that need to be, put in place. First of all, most of these farmers need funds for those in the sector, because most times we also want to access credit facility. The term and the condition are not too favorable. The road to most of these farms are very bad, that hamper the success that ordinarily the farmers would have achieved.
In a recent interview, the Minister of Agriculture, Senator Abubakar Kyari, expressed readiness by the ministry to tackle challenges faced by poultry farmers as well as challenges of food security, in corroboration with the President's declaration of a state of emergency on food security.
Mere mentioning in his renewed agenda, renewed hope agenda, and I also see that hope, that commitment in him when he declared the food emergency in the country on the first day.
However, in what practical ways will these drastic measures effectively revive the nation's food and agricultural sector? Well, that remains to be seen by Nigerians. Chidima Jarasin, Global TV News.
Time to take a look at the papers for you this morning and just pop a couple of big headlines across Nigeria's national dailies this promising Monday. Let's see what we have on the Vanguard, the Guardian. Let's begin with the Vanguard newspaper. Real quick this morning, the big story on the front page of the Vanguard says, uproar over Nigeria's 1,411-man delegation to COP 28th. By the way, some report is now alleging that this entire trip to COP 28 in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, is costing the country well over 800 million naira, something almost touching 1 billion. I mean, that's a whole lot of money. But then, maybe it's not so much about the volume, so to speak, of the money as it is about the, I mean, whether or not we're getting commensurate value in the grand scheme of things. But then the story, the headline itself has a couple of riders underneath it. So we look at those riders for you. It says FG didn't fund all COP28 delegates. That's according to presidency. OBLP blasts Tinubu, say high delegation wastes of taxpayers' money. PDP demands roll call, costs incurred by FG delegates. Asks NAS to commence probe. UK commits £100 million to assist Nigeria orders. So you find details of that story on page 5 of today's Vanguard newspaper. All right. What's more, on page 12, it says NAS committee to propose commence quick amendments of sections of PIA. Ex-Niger Governor Aliyu knocks northern leaders for setting region backwards. But was he ready to have that conversation when he was Niger State Governor? I mean, he was there for 8 years as well, talking about former governor of that state, Babangida Aliyu. Was he ready to have that conversation? Because there have been personalities across the northern part of this country who have also been very concerned about the plight of the states across the region, I mean across the entire northern region, who feel the region could have done better. The region has the potential, has the resources, has the people, all right, human resources, that is, to do better. But that level of leadership, that quality of vision has not been provided over time. So it's a good thing that a former governor who had also, one way or another, been previously accused of the same thing, he's now coming out, all right, to just lend his voice to the call for a better northern Nigeria. So we see how that plays out in the final analysis. But then we have a couple of more headlines to look at this morning for you. Says Nigeria's economy begins major shifts as oil sector rebounds. Okay, what's more, SGF to Nigerians, keep faith, there is hope for Nigeria. Jakba, we interviewed over 150,000 Nigerians for visas in 2023. That's according to the U.S., right? What's more, above the nameplate of the Vanguard, it says how Intel's waived $193 million debt to resolve stalemates over pilotage contracts. That's according to the NPA. I want to benefit from FG's reinstatement of Intel's contract, Atiku. NJC names new 11 justices for Supreme Court this week. The story is on page 13 of the Vanguard newspaper. Monday interview, alarm bells, the killer effects of inflation on the economy by Muda Yusuf. That's the former DG of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, LCCI, Dr. Muda Yusuf. But you can read up this particular story on page 22 of today's issue of the Vanguard newspaper. Okay, but then let's flip over to Nigerian Tribune, which also has quite a number of stories this morning. However, for the Nigerian Tribune, we are beginning with stories above the nameplate. So you look at, let's see what page that is now, page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune. What do you find there? It says PDP knocks Tinubu's climate change summit delegation, calls for NAS investigation. And then the writer there says not all delegates sponsored by government. Of course, the presidency has jumped to defense as always. Okay, and then there's a story with the picture of the executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service there, Zaka Dedeji, with details on page 4, but the headline is on the front page. It says FIRS waives penalties interest on outstanding tax liabilities. And then the star story on the front page says DSS, EFCC, ICPC vet Supreme Court nominees. NJC unveils 11-man list Thursday. New head of court judges to emerge. Adelicate's complaints against Oshun CJ under review. And then you look at page 4 of today's Tribune. It says Intel's waived $193 million debt to resolve service boats contracts, right? COVID-19, this is at the foot of the front page. COVID-19, reps committee uncovers more infractions as health institutions make presentations, okay? Then when you look at the left end of the front page of the Nigerian Tribune today, rejects Wike's plan to spend 15 billion naira on VP's residence, Serap tells Akpabio. 200 lawyers volunteer to assist Governor Yusuf at Supreme Court. That's talking about the politics of Kano State. Now, experts worry as debt servicing gulp more money than infrastructure others in 2024 budget. That's enough reason to be worried, quite frankly. But then, not to worry, we have other papers for you this morning. The Guardian is our next port of call for you. Big story reads, over 60 refinery licenses inactive 18 years after as fuel imports thrives. All right, Intel's waived $193 million debt to resolve pilotage crisis, NPA affirms on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. Kano uncovers diversion of palliatives, vows to punish culprits. Rejects Wike's 15 billion naira benefiting residents for, we'll go over that from the top. Rejects Wike's 15 billion naira befitting residents for VP, Serap urges Senate. And then we have other stories. Teachers hold Subeb bus hostage, disrupts aptitude tests in Dutse, that's in Jigawa State. Details on page 28 of today's Guardian newspaper. NJC to select 11 new Supreme Court judges Wednesday. Right, Field Road, female passenger dies, 2 injured in Lagos tanker accident. NACS trail FG's large delegation to COP28, alleged waste of resources. Okay, and I mean, at this point where we're looking at, talking about the urgent needs to cut cost of governance, we shouldn't be having conversations about over bloated expenditure on account of attending some climate action conference in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Just to state here that just yesterday, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Chuga, had also talked about how that President Tinubu didn't deliver. I mean, he skipped the delivery of his speech at the conference. And his reason, the reason for that, according to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, is that, come on, we get to do this ritual year in, year out with little to nothing, next to nothing to show for it. So he says Nigeria, going forward, has become action-oriented. So beyond the papers, all of the theories, and so on and so forth, Nigeria wants to be seen taking actions on these very salient issues, and we hope that is beyond being politically correct. Okay, Daily Trust is where we turn to next. Let's look at Daily Trust for you this morning, just beneath the nameplate of the Daily Trust newspaper today. It says APC Plateau Speaker lock horns over swearing in of new lawmakers. Jakba, we've interviewed 180,000 Nigerians this year. That's according to the United States Embassy in the country. 3 months after, no clue on whereabouts of abducted Zamfara varsity students. Outrage over Nigeria's 1,411 delegates to COP28 summits with 4 riders there. Tinubu has turned climate change conference to Owambe. That's according to Atiku, presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, in the 2023 presidential election. His waste of resources, says Obi, it's outrageous, insensitive CSOs, government-funded contingents less than 100. That's according to presidency. PDP demands refund of Esticles, asks National Assembly to investigate delegation. Okay. Then let's move on. Take a look at a few more headlines for you this morning. FIRS grants waivers on tax penalties, liabilities. NSCDC personnel brutalize Anambra journalists. said media is Nigeria's problem. 700 Palestinians killed as Israel renews Gaza bombardments. Recall that just last week there had been some sort of truce reached between Hamas and Israel. And that truce was extended by a couple of days, but now we understand it had elapsed just by midnight Friday. So in the last few days, bombardment has resumed, all right, on both sides, even though there appears to be more of that onslaught coming from Israel against Hamas and, of course, the entire Gaza Strip. We'll keep an eye out for you on the developments on that front. Okay. But this story has two riders underneath it. Pope Francis seeks new ceasefire deal. How do we get around that, given that we understand Qatar had been able to help midwife the previous one? Gulf countries' diplomats meet in Doha again. Takes them to Qatar, okay? But then, what's more, another paper for you, the Nation newspaper this time. All right, let's see what the Nation has got for us real quick. Big story first on the Nation. It says Senate's House ready to pass budget 2024 before December 31. All right, then it reads, Fed lawmakers invite ministers, heads of agencies, security chiefs, others apparently to come defend their budget proposals. Above the nameplate, FIRS waives penalties on outstanding tax liabilities. Then here it says, U.S. envoy, U.S. investors excited about Tinubu's economic agenda. Sounds like a good thing. 10 INEC directors out. What's more? Ondo Council chiefs resume. Okay, and then we have one headline just at the foot, maybe even two. APC clears all seats in Ekiti councils. Ogun shuts 3 more companies. Why? Well, read details up for yourself on page 27 of the Nation newspaper this morning. We'll take a look at leadership for you as well. Leadership newspaper this morning. Okay, it says 400 billion naira state pension backlog threatens workers' retirement plan, with a rider there that says Anambra, Benue, Delta, Ekiti, Osun defaults in pension remittances. Okay, then above the nameplates, it says, I have sold my shares in Intels long ago. Atiku, obviously that's the basis on which the man is saying that this new waiver of $193 million will not benefit him. Okay, but Punch has stories as well. As we turn to Punch newspaper now, would like to begin with stories right above the nameplates. The Punch newspaper, budgets, National Assembly, 6 agencies allocations rise 40% to 1.4 trillion naira. Over 150,000 Nigerians supplied for U.S. visa in 2023. That's according to U.S. envoy. Right, tax defaults, FIRS waives fines, issues December 31 deadline. Jakba hospitals reduce outpatients surgeries as 4,000 doctors migrate. That's a shame now, a shame for a country. Right, 1,197 Nigerian doctors moved to UK since May 29. Right, then what's more, 789 Kano nurses, 162 doctors quit. OAUTH, that's Obafemi Awolowo University Teaching Hospital, closes psychiatric units over lack of nurses. Doctors falls 5% health budget. Kano governor's aide arrested for alleged palliative looting. Anger as Lagos mechanic's car crushes mother, 2 children. Details of that pathetic story is on pages 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper today. Akwa Ibom coppers in kidnappers' den 4 months after abduction. And then it raises the question of what is being done to help secure their freedom. I mean, 4 months is a long time for somebody to be in kidnappers' den, but then that's how sad the story can get. Ogun police student killed in fresh robbery attack. That's on page 5 of today's Punch newspaper. Our last port of call this morning is Business Day. All right, Business Day has a story above the nameplates, which continues on page 2. It says how celebrities feel Nigeria's gambling epidemic. Tinubu's outsized COP28 delegation cost 880 million naira to fly, with 2 riders here. Many on delegation are Rido, Peter Obi, and what's more, a presidency defense large delegation. Okay. El-Rufai plans, let's see what it says about El-Rufai's plan now. Says here, El-Rufai plans a $100 million venture capital in private sector return. Of course, he has been governor, but now he's going back to the private sector. And that's what we're leaving it with the papers, everyone. Let's now hear from the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations.
To act is now. And right now, we are going to hear a special message from one of the world's leading women, the Deputy Secretary General of the UN, Amina J. Mohammed, who sadly couldn't be with us, but she wanted to make sure that you would hear directly from her.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us in this commemoration. The International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls serves as a stark reminder of one of the most pervasive human rights violations and a global public health problem with negative multiplier effects across economies, politics, and societies. The rates of violence against women are alarmingly high and further aggravated by conflicts, crises, and emergencies. And the protracted global backlash against gender equality is threatening to undo decades of hard-won gains. Women's rights defenders and activists are facing more risks than ever before, including in the digital sphere. Halfway through the 2030 Agenda, we are far from achieving the target of eliminating violence against women and girls. It transcends borders and cultures. This year's commemoration calls for the special attention to prevention. Investment in prevention is to invest in our collective well-being. It means creating conditions where women and girls can thrive, unburdened by the fear of violence. It means addressing both root causes and drivers of violence, challenging discriminatory norms and practices, and promoting holistic prevention policies and programs. First, to address root causes and drivers, it is important to invest in data collection and analysis and use it to inform policy and programming. Second, to tackle discriminatory norms and practices, legal reform to enhance equality and advocacy towards behavior change is needed. And third, prevention policies and programs must be multi-sectoral, coordinated and well-resourced with a long-term vision. The EU-UN Spotlight Initiative provides a promising model. Results achieved have been historic and unprecedented. Nearly 500 laws and policies have been signed or strengthened. 2.5 million women and girls have accessed GBV services, and thousands of lives have been saved. Astride both Goals 5 and 16, Spotlight has strengthened civic space, as well as deepened government ownership and sustainability, evidenced by the 10-fold increase in national budget allocations to GBV. As we prepare for Summit of the Future, your engagement in prevention is critical to accelerate efforts collectively. Investing in prevention is not just practical, it is transformative. We must act now for a better and safer future for all women and girls and for everyone. Each of us has a vital role, the UN family, development partners, civil society and the private sector, to step up our efforts in preventing and ending violence against women and girls. Let's turn our shared commitment into concrete action, and together let's build a future where every woman and girl live free from violence. Thank you.